So I have a new Creative Grid tool for you today that up until recently I wasn't exactly clear on why this is actually more valuable than I first thought. This particular tool is called the Perfect Rectangle Ruler, and I thought, well, do we really need a tool to do a perfect rectangle? Yes, especially if you want to have this look of a two-piece rectangle. We all know we can cut rectangles. We do it all the time. We're quilters. But we're not usually doing it where we have two fabrics placed right side together and we're using a tool so that we have a beautiful, perfect rectangle that frames any 12-inch block, giving it almost a rounded look. It's an illusion. There are no curves in this table runner, but look at the effect that it has. So I always like to show you a tool, and I'd like to show you how it looks in a real project. And so this is kind of a hybrid today. Let's start off with the tool, how we use the tool. You can see what it does, and then we'll move into our specific project. This happens to be the Merry Manor Metallic Fabrics by Moda. I love these fabrics, Christmas holiday fabrics with beautiful metallic gold details that just take it to a completely elegant level. And you can see these are nice big blocks. Look at that. You simply make 3 of these blocks here, and we're putting that all together and we have a nice runner. So I love that the block is so big, but let's focus on the tool first, how we use it, and why this little dynamo is actually a pretty valuable tool. And it can do a variety of sizes. These just happen to be the size that we selected, and this is part of the Any 12 Will Do runner pattern by Cut Loose Press. And we have a little bit of additional instructions that will make it even more beginner friendly, because that's what we're always hoping for. Whether you've been quilting for decades or quilting for a week, our goal is to help everyone be able to be successful with our projects, because we want everyone to be included in the fun and joy of quilting and be able to be successful. That's the goal. So let's first just look at the Perfect Rectangle Ruler and help us unpack how we can use that to be able to make these two-piece rectangles. You can see that here in this little icon, and you can see there's other blocks that we can do as well, but we're just going to focus on this unit right here and how do we get that accomplished. Our first instruction mentions, of course, it has the non-slip grip here. We all know that rulers are inherently kind of a little bit slippery, but Creative Grid has put a nice grip on the back, so once we apply pressure, it locks that into our cutting mat, and that stabilizes the acrylic template, so when we're making a cut, nothing's moving. We don't want anything to be moving at all, so we can make some nice, precise cuts. Our first instruction is cutting the triangles from the strips. Makes sense. Determine the finished size of your rectangles, and this will do anything from 1 inch all the way to 9. Add a 1/2 inch for seam allowance. In this example, the finished rectangle measures 4 by 8, therefore cut 2 contrasting fabrics that are 8.5 wide. Now for our project, I'm going to be kind of going from these instructions to what we're actually doing so I can bridge the gap and be able to, this is also a tutorial on how to do this particular block. In this instance, this happened to be 6.5 inches unfinished. So the strips that I cut of my 2 fabric, width of fabric, were 6.5 inch. So that was the first thing that you'll need to determine when you're just selecting that tool. Of course, in our cutting instructions, we're going to be guiding you into that. Because our fabric usage was different than what they used in the cut loose pattern, you'll be using the Shabby Fabrics included cutting instructions because they show you the pictures of the fabrics we selected. That way there's no question what fabric is what and what size you'll be cutting the strips to. So our instructions are guiding you into cutting this to 6.5 and this one to 6.5 because that's what makes up, of course, our rectangle. The first other thing that they mention is to kind of bring your selvages together here. I'm going to even flip mine over so that we want to make sure that we're never including the selvage in our cut. So advanced quilters and even experienced quilters already know that, but sometimes beginners have asked me that. Do we use this part that's white? No. And sometimes people like to actually save that. It's kind of fun. There's a lot of selvage quilts out there today. It has a lot of fun indicia on there and colors. Might be a fun thing to just keep for memory's sake or include in a selvage quilt. So the next thing that we'll be doing is we place our tool. I'm going to actually cut off that selvage. And I could even use my tool, right? It makes a great straight edge. I really don't need to grab for a different tool at this point. I'm just going to line that up and give a nice clean cut straight away. And I'm going to turn this, because I'm right-handed, over here. Once we do that, notice how the tool, in this particular case, will line up. And because we cut our strips to 6.5, naturally we're saying 6.5. Now notice how at the top of our tool, that notching right there, that is very important. That is some of the brilliance behind Creative Grid. I love that that notching is there because it's going to help us with alignment later when we go back and we sew the cream to the beautiful red. Notice how I have kept my fabric folded in half. Don't open that up. We want a left and a right of this and a left and a right of that. You are cutting through 4 layers at a time. That is intentional. Lay our tool here, lined up right along that edge. There's my 6.5. I'm going to make a cut, and let's move this out of the way. I'm going to cut right up in here. That little bit of notching is going to do us a lot of favors. Put that right here. Guess what? I'm simply going to flip my tool around. There's my 6.5 lying right along the edge. Move this out of the way so when we come in to make this cut, we're not cutting into that. All right? Put this here. Guess what? We just keep going, making sure that after each cut, you're moving your strip set out of the way. Once you have that done with this strip set, you'll repeat that. Our instructions have you cutting 2 of the 6.5 by width of fabric of both the beautiful cream as well as the red. And that's going to depend if you're going to be just picking up the tool and doing a completely separate project. But for this particular project for the runner, you do need 2 of those strips. So you'll continue cutting. All right, we understand now how to cut this, and that notching is important. You're really done with the tool at this point. Now we talk about, okay, now that I have this, what am I going to actually be doing? And it's really quite intuitive, right? You can see now, because that fabric was right side together, we have kind of a left and a right. Makes sense. We have this and we have that. Now watch what happens when I place these right side together. See that notching right there? How incredible that is right here? It is very important because remember, we have bias going. We cut on an angle. And I should have said in the very, very beginning, add sizing, add lots of sizing to your fabric even before you press it out. It helps stabilize bias. And if you don't know what bias is, anytime you cut a fabric off of both the grain, which goes both up across the width of the fabric and down the length, bias is off grain. And what that means is that fabric can become very stretchy on that angle. Well, stretch is not a good thing for quilting, and we need to stabilize that. We can stabilize it one of 2 ways. Adding plenty of sizing to try to just add more girth and stability to it, but also good pinning. Here, I'm going to be pinning both here. I definitely want to pin here. And I'm going to pin in between. Okay. Even though I have a sample sewn. I'm going to sew this with you. I want you to see this. On the back side, I can't see this place. Some people, Tammy mentioned, she even went so far as to pin back here, which you could do. However, because of the pin head, this could get potentially caught somewhere in here, or this won't lay flat. For me, I think I'm more comfortable with my pin here, but the goal is being very careful with what you're doing, and we need to dial in that 1/4" seam allowance. If you're like me, my seam guide is my savior. It keeps me true. I'm going to put that onto my machine right now. And I've already learned for me, because I have my cluck sew diagonal tape, I've learned for me, it's just along the right side of that. That's where I've positioned my cluck sew so that I can bring this seam guide in and off as I need it, and I definitely want it right now. So let's sew our 1/4" seam. And I can see my pin. I should have moved that over even more. Let me remove that. I don't want that kind of riding along with me as we continue. Okay, so as we can see, half of our rectangles are going to be with this orientation, and half will be with the orientation we just did, right? That's what's giving us that opposite. This one's going to be going here. In order to have interlocking seams, notice how this one is pressed to the red and this is pressed to the cream. All you need to do is establish, okay, if the red is on my bottom right, and I'm going to orient half of my blocks like this, then press those to the red and the other half in this orientation. Let me flip this around here. Just establish, once you have all of yours sewn together, divvy them up into 2 stacks, okay? This half is going to be, I'm just going to press toward the red. And then when this is sewn together, and I think we did one ahead of time. Yes, we did. We went ahead and pressed toward the cream. What that's going to do for us is this is going to give us interlocking seams when we join these together. One thing I want to point out to you, which is an unusual sight picture and a little bit different than what's showing inside the instructions, is right here, you're not seeing these extra things kind of extending. This is almost like showing like kind of a cleaned up block. See this little notch right here? That's a normal sight picture. Imagine the fabric is still attached, right? That little piece of that cream would come right into that corner. So that little jog is normal. I thought that was an error when I first saw that. That is normal. Notice we see that also right here, that little jog. Okay, once we've done that, we decide, okay, we're going to now place these, and if you want to trim off the dog, a little bit of the dog ears, you certainly can, if those are bothering you. Now we place these right side together. This is what's giving us the interlocking seams. See that right there? How that's just tracking right along here. Pin, pin, and sew. And we've done that ahead of time. And now we want to press that open, just to distribute that bulk evenly. And that's going to give you 1 side, 2 side, 3 side, 4 side. So that is what's giving you that frame here. And isn't that cool? And keep in mind, this tool produces all of these different sizes. The smallest little rectangle all the way up to the biggest being, it looks like 9 inches, I believe, finished. Yes, 9-inch finish. And for our project, of course, these are going to be finishing at 6 inches. So that's how to use the Perfect Rectangle Ruler. Such a cool way to add kind of a geometry to a project. Maybe take a block that by itself has just been, oh, okay, and frame it. And what we do in the corners, of course, is just add some squares. And look how big of a block this produces. It just really expands a block from 12 inches here to now 18 inches. Isn't that cool? So be sure to pick up the Perfect Rectangle Ruler. I've never really thought of framing a block with this tool before, but I love the geometry it introduces. I love the size expansion it does. And I also love, of course, the different sizes it offers. So be sure to pick that up. Now, if you'd like to have some tips and techniques on the actual block construction, stay with me. I'm going to clean up just a touch and we'll move into that. This is where we'd like to encourage you to be sure to follow our instructions on this, because we have a way to create what's called a variable star block that is a little bit more beginner friendly, and we reduce some of that bias stretching. So stay with me. I'm going to clean up a bit and then I'll take you into the instructions of how we put together this particular block that makes up the all 12 will do runner. The variable star block is easier than it looks. The first thing we'll do is we'll start off cutting our fabrics that are going to make up a half square triangle, and that's going to be our cream with our beautiful poinsettia as well as our green floral. And then we would cut a second piece of our green floral, and we also have this kind of ditzy print here. But we're going to make half square triangles. You've got the option, always have the option on the light colored background, draw the line diagonal to diagonal, and sewing a 1/4 inch on either side of that once you've positioned the two fabrics right side together. And that's what we're showing here. We love to use the seam guide tool by Creative Grid because I'm always more accurate sewing on a drawn line. This is how I like to do it, and I think the sewing team pretty much does this way as well now, versus drawing the line diagonally and then tracking a 1/4 inch left and right. Pin, pin, we're going to sew directly on those lines. All right, did our magic sewing. Now we use any straight edge we might have to cut diagonal to diagonal. And remember, inside our instructions, our arrows are going to guide you into the pressing. So we want to make sure we're following that. In this instance, it looks like we're pressing to the green. So we'll just do that. And we'll create a nice, big, beautiful half square triangle, 2 of them actually. Okay, so just press that, and we repeat that steps, except this time we have this print and we have the green. Same thing. Are you going to draw the line diagonally and track a 1/4 inch left and right, or perhaps use that creative seam guide, draw it and sew on it? However you want to choose to do that, you'll need to create 2 more half square triangles. And once you have that, now we'll simply take 1 of each, and we want to make sure that these are opposites, right? Makes sense. I always kind of audition this is actually called an hourglass block. I always want to make sure I audition that. And it makes sense because this seam's moving this direction, this seam's moving this direction. We place those right side together. And once again, once we have that, they're having us draw either the line diagonally, or we could once again use our seam guide. I'm going to use the seam guide every single time. Draw, draw, sew on that. Okay. Then we're going to trim. Cut, I should say, not trim. Cut diagonal to diagonal. And our instructions, let's see what they're having us do here. That seam, I'm going to actually press that seam open. If I can. A great one for maybe a presser bar. Press the seam open. And we'll do the same here. Now this is an oversized block. I love oversized blocks. Why do I love oversized blocks? It gives me the chance to square them up. And in this case, right here, trim to 4.5 inches square. Well, we know we have a nice diagonal and we have that kind of bullseye right there. So let's just kind of get that in that perfect position where we're using as much lineup aid as we possibly can. The lines running along my seam allowance. That right here, that little bullseye, trying to make sure that's as square as it can possibly be. Notice how this ruler is running right along these seam allowances. That's another clue that you're in the right location. Notice how the spinning mat is absolutely phenomenal for keeping you in the right position to trim. No unsafe cuts, no lifting the block. For maximum accuracy, this is how you want to trim up a block every single time. You really don't want to lift it, and you certainly don't want to make any dangerous cuts. I've seen way too many of that things in both real life, at various locations, including quilt retreats. So I'm like, ooh, don't do that. That's dangerous, right? We're in this for the long haul. Let me move the spinning mat out of the way. So that's how you're making your hourglass blocks. So easy peasy, starting with our half square triangles, right? And you saw the way that we oriented those. Once you have all of that done, you know, you're just now having your corners of your block, you have the center of your block, right? Laying everything out, and of course positioning these around, kind of around. Let's see how many of these we have. Actually, we just sewed the top row right side together, and you can see we're pressing in opposite directions, so that top row is sewn together with our magic sewing. Here our middle makes sense, we press toward the middle, and then our bottom row, and just like that, right, you have an incredible block. Let's talk about pinning here. We're not going to just place our rows right side together and pin left to right, because we want these points of our block hitting. How we do that is to make sure we're focused on that first, pinning from back here, pinning from back here, then we go and pin corner to corner. Not just left or right, hope and pray. We're more intentional about pinning so that we're going to hit those spots. And of course, you're going to do the same down here. And then in the end, this seam, we're just going to be pressing that open. And I'll show you that real quick here so you can see what we did to press that open. And that's actually the block here. Now, once you have your block done, as you could see, here we continue on with our block construction. Kind of back here in our pattern where we begin to have our sections here. Remember how we have our block. All right, let's pretend like our block is all done. Here we're going to just be adding top and bottom. And then you could assemble all of this in one row, right? Top and bottom. So your corners on, so now you have your sides on, and you have an impressive 18-inch finished block. Think about this in a quilt. If you're trying to make a quilt that's a good size, this is a great option to grow any block by adding these very interesting, almost optical illusion, giving your quilt almost this look of having some circles in it. So it's very interesting, very intriguing how a two-piece rectangle can really transform and advance the look and sophistication of a block, and really there's not that much complication to doing it. I love that. So now you've kind of seen how do we use that tool, how does that block go together. As you can see, totally beginner friendly, forever timeless, beautiful on a table. Head to the Shabby website. These fabrics have already been discontinued by Moda, already happened. So get to the website right now to pick up this beautiful table runner kit. As you can see, this tool is required And as we work through that square up tool of that 4.5, pick that one up too. You're going to have so many reasons to use a Creative Grid 4.5 inch tool. I use it all at Ruler. I use it all the time, and it works amazing with a spinning mat. While you're there, subscribe not only to the Shabby Fabrics email, but also text. That is the fastest way to know about new things like this, sales, block the months, promotions, and so much more. Thanks for giving me part of your day. I look forward to seeing you soon on another Shabby video.